What's going on, guys? This is Brian here with Texas Gun Experience, and we are back with another episode of the Gun Experience podcast. Now, this format's going to be a little different for this episode. Usually, it's myself and Tristan as the host. We go back and forth with all types of different crazy stuff, but this week it's really special. So I have two guys with me here with some incredible backgrounds, incredible stories, but to kind of give an introduction to what we're doing and why we have them here before I actually introduce them is, Texas Gun Experience, we're all encompassing. We're all about the 2A, we're all about family, firearms training, medical, everything. But there's so much more to just going out there and being proficient, learn how to shoot, and poking holes in paper with your friends. But really, doing some good. And there's a lot of ways we can do this. Big and small. There's and some of the stories you'll probably hear later on too are just, great feats of, average and I should say above average men. But there's a lot of evil in the world and a lot of craziness going on. And right now, I think we can all agree, it's probably the craziest time that most of us have seen. In generations. So, for us, we're always looking at, what can we do to kind of help and do our part as far as, just making the world a better place. And I'm not talking, throwing on armor and, ridding the world of terrorists and commies and all that stuff. We're thinking about cleaning up, what's in our backyard, and our families and everything that's affected by it. And it's really, and a big issue is human trafficking. So I know I was, in the military, I felt like every month I had some type of a death by PowerPoint of just how to, to spot, notice, and what to do about human trafficking, because it's such an issue in the United States. And, you hear all these things about, politicians and, famous celebrities and the whole Epstein stuff and all these secret shady organizations and all this kind of weird cloak and dagger stuff. Those things exist. And it's I'm not on a soapbox. I'm not trying to kind of spew my opinion. Those are just facts. So, there are people out there that are actually doing things about that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, TGE is decided to, we are, partnering up with a couple different companies to support, a cause to go out and actually find and recover a lot of these children. So, Texas Gun Experience has partnered up with Green Devil Garage, the Association for the Recovery of Children, and Staccato Handguns, all is kind of a couple month-long campaign to help raise funds for ARC, the Association for Recovery of Children. So, these are, they're saints in what they do, and these are real, tier one, high-level, operators that are going out there. And they're not looking for the bad guys. They're looking to save kids. And the numbers I'm sure we'll talk about are just, it breaks your heart. It kind of breaks your soul just listening to what happens to, just kids, man. It's this stuff's so surreal. So it's a noble cause. It's an awesome cause. So, pretty much starting from the time you're listening and seeing this through November 11th, which is Veterans Day. And we are going to be gathering funds in all for ARC. So, we have a couple cool ways to do it, and we're not just asking for your money. We have some really cool tie-ins with, a badass motorcycle that we're going to be raffling off that ties in. We also have Staccato that's going to be raffling off, their flagship gun, the XC as well. So I'll definitely give a lot more details as we go on, but I just kind of want to get that out there as an introduction. So to my left, to your right, I have Patrick, who's the owner of Green Devil Garage and responsible for the motorcycle that we're going to be raffling off. And then our good friend Baz, who is the founder and president of ARC, the Association for Recovery of Children. So, gents, man, it's been a crazy couple of days, so I appreciate you coming in town. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm sure, we've already discussed a bunch of times, but I thought it was so cool just going to lunch the other day and listening to these guys talk in the background. So I'm kind of, it's one of those things I could care less about celebrities or anything like that, but I see guys like this that are, doing the hard things out in the world. And it's a humbling experience. It's really cool. It's great. I'm sure anybody around you guys are very thankful for the kind of the mentorship that you probably offer. So I appreciate you coming down, and I just kind of want to share your stories and just rap a little bit about everything that we got going on. So, maybe Baz, start kind of with just like your background and, let's start with that first. Just, I guess, backgrounds and introductions for everybody.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. It's good to be here. And it's good to be here at Texas Gun Experience. It's like home away from home. So we really appreciate your hospitality and having us and helping us with, the mission of rescuing more children. I'm a Citadel graduate. I'm a former captain, Marine Corps, counterterrorism, former CIA, Special Operations Ground Branch and Maritime Officer. Had a couple things on the blacklist. Co-starred on a TV show with James Spader, which was cool. And now I'm the CEO and president and founder, of course, of the Association for the Recovery of Children, which, as you know, is it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization of former intelligence, military, and law enforcement officers who are dedicated to the recovery of missing, exploited, and trafficked American children.
So I want to introduce Pat, and then I think it's really important to, I guess, expand about the just the sheer amount of kids that go missing and all that. But before we get into like the heavy segment, why don't you tell us about yourself, man?
Also, thank you very much for having us both here. Thank you for being a part of this whole thing. It's great. The hospitality, getting to go down and shoot guns together earlier. It's a great time. Just sitting at lunch, awesome. Very many shared experiences. A lot of people call that eavesdropping. We talk about sitting on the outside talking about. Right. No, it's been a great time, and it's. I own Green Devil Garage. I've spent the last 18 years with Naval Special Warfare. Been to a lot of the same places, which sparked a lot of the good conversation. I opened up my shop about 10 years ago. I've done a lot of charitable builds, things like that, and I was just very fortunate enough to kind of stumble across this opportunity that brought us all together. Very serendipitous, but very cool.
It's so crazy. I know there's a lot of people who are going to try and like draw like the yarn on the map, like how does everyone come together and all this, and it's just it's amazing. Use your brother, I guess Mike, as an example. So we got a customer of ours who since we've opened, it's just been a great. I hate to call him a customer because it's like
Mike is Mike.
Yeah, I mean he is, but he instantly kind of befriended everybody at the shop. We treat him like one of ours, and I mean it's such a good relationship with someone. So a genuine kind of a character. So everyone really appreciate him. So when we met, with the ARC came to us about a year and a half ago. So we had a group of guys. And man, we were all just floored by this story. Everyone was telling us, and kind of, sickened at the same time, but excited to help. But it was just like, what can we do or whatever. So we're just, because at the time we just couldn't just stroke a big check, as much as we wanted to. So we're like, man, how can we, tie these things together? So Mike, was just kind of relaying. I was like, man, he's like, you were here 5 minutes too late. I, would have got you in front of these guys just to meet them and all these things. I think that's kind of how that conversation went. He was like, talking about a custom motorcycle and talking about you and just so we're like, man, we'll make this work. Let's try and like glue this together somehow. So it took some time, but here we are. And the whole cause, the why is to raise funds for ARC, and then the what is like there's some badass bike and some just cool stuff. It's feel good. So even you can, if it's all about winning that stuff, great. If it's just about feel good stuff, that's what we're trying to do. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. Got a lot of great partners on board. So that kind of, I guess, hopefully kind of helps marry that story a little bit, and why we're all here. Even kind of the same but different walks of life, and how the three of us are all here. So I think it's really important to kind of just punch everyone in the face or in the ears, I guess, as far as like the evil that we're up against. It's so important because I think every other conversation after this is going to be kind of weighed against like what we're looking to combat and what people that aren't a part of the association want to do to help. So I guess as far as like, I know there's a crazy number of kids that go missing every year, just in the United States alone. So just expand on like what you see as far as those numbers and where these people are going and what's happening to them. I think it's heavy, but it's really important.
Sure. Yeah, I think first of all, we should thank you for your service. You know, he didn't talk about his Marine Corps days, but
I'll simplify.
there you go, Semper Fi, good.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded.
Yeah, you're surrounded by Marines, there you go. Which is generally the way it is with the Navy, isn't it? Are we protecting them
At
on their
least I know I'm the
ships?
smartest one.
Well, that's
in
why I
the
got
room.
my back away from him.
Oh, there you go,
And all that.
exactly. So,
Hey, at least I know I'm the smartest one in the room.
fortunately, he builds a really badass motorcycle, so
Yes,
there you
yes,
have it.
yes.
I have one use.
My notepad's all crammed out, so it is,
Well, thanks, Brian. Again, it's it's kind of an ugly subject.
Sure.
And, you know, the word, and we've talked about this many times, but the world child trafficking or child trafficking, and America particularly, because we are actually the largest buyers of sex in the world. So I think it's fair to say we're kind of an over-sexualized society here. And when we talk about that, we're talking about child slavery, child abuse, child exploitation, child trafficking, child pornography, and anything else that contributes to that very sophisticated business model, which globally is worth billions of dollars. A lot of money, you know, off of children. So children basically have not only become an easy target, but they've become a commodity, unlike anything we've ever seen in history, I believe. It's probably always been there, but not as bad as it is now. So in the United States, last year there were 400,000 plus American children missing. So you don't see 400,000 children walking the streets. So the question is, where do they go? Well, some are missing, some are runaways, some go into satanic cults, some go into sex slavery and held places so they can be filmed in pornography. Some are sold and trafficked as sex slaves, which I think is probably a good time, you know, when we talk about that word trafficking, it's being so used, or maybe overused, that people don't even flinch an eye. So what it really is, it's paid child rape. In other words, a buyer comes into somebody that is illegally abducted a child that in the meantime has tortured that child by starving them, by feeding them drugs, by keeping them in a closet, chaining them to a bed, beating them, whatever they can do to put them in to be submissive sex toys, so to speak, to a buyer. The buyer walks in and says, I want to give you this much money for that 3-year-old girl, or that 5-year-old boy, or that 11-year-old, 14-year-old child, and I want to have my way with that child. And so they do. Now, I've seen a lot of horrendous things. Patrick, as you have, we've all been downrange, and we've seen a lot of ugly stuff. But I'll tell you what, I've never seen anything as evil and as ugly as the sexual exploitation of children, particularly in our country. So because it's such an ugly subject, a lot of people want to pretend it's not there. So they don't take time to figure out what does it look like, or learn what do I do about it, or how do I even help prevent it until it shows up on their doorstep.
Wasn't it like Stalin that was like, you know, one death is a, you know, what was it, a catastrophe or, you know, heartbreaking, but, you know, 1 million deaths is just a statistic. So it's like, do you think it's some of that, or do you think we just like choose to not? I mean, is it fake news? You know, like just people's head in the sand? Because it's so hard to, you know, we've been talking about these for, you know, a couple days now, and just like it's so hard to wrap your mind around like anybody's motivation to do this to a child, especially, you know.
Right.
And I mean, at any age, I mean, and especially when we're talking about infants and, you know, just young kids like that, it's like it blows my mind. It's hard for, I'm sure, most people listening to comprehend that. Like, you know,
Well, it's uncomfortable.
right? I guess it's so weird. Like, why don't you think? I mean, people aren't more vocal about this or trying to take more action, or and I know, you know, we discussed there's hardships at the high level, and we can elaborate on that. But as far as just like the general public, do you think it's just a lethargy, like they just too lazy, too whatever, it's not right in front of them? Is it just a lack of awareness? Because I think if you went out and polled everyone, 100 out of 100 people would be like, no, that ain't right.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all. It's a combination of people are distracted, they're working, they have their own families to take care of, and so they don't have time to make themselves aware of all the problems in the world, so to speak. And it's a problem. Others know it exists, but they look the other way because it's not my problem. Some know it exists and are lethargic, and they don't really even care. Look, if we live in a nation where we think it's okay to destroy unborn babies, well, then what value do we have on children? They're the next step up after, they're born. And then if we treat our elderly like we do, which is basically after you're 85, we discharge them. We don't care for them or whatever. This is the mentality of our society. So the foolishness in that is that these children are the next generations for America. There used to be a time in our country where our grandparents or our parents did everything they could to make life better for us. And look at where we are right now. We're very blessed. Unfortunately, a lot of people in generations that are coming after us, of course, are so tied up in their own self-awareness, their own telephones, their own computers, their own everything, me, 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 me. And then when we have people in authority that make corruption look okay or get away with crimes, then the younger generations see this as the example of what it means to be an American. And that's not what it's all about, and we know that. So.
I think kind of almost got to the point to kind of expand on that even is it's become like such a normal thing that the lines between like what are morals at this point now.
Right.
You bring up the fact that the United States is the number one buyer. Like I didn't know that until you brought that to our attention.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because I mean we have it easy in the United States, and we totally do.
Well, we did until gas prices went up.
Yeah, no, I drive an old dually, man. I can't go nowhere.
Man, so now.
Everybody want to give me a skateboard? But now everything's, you see people in these higher up positions and people that try to fight with, like, what we've been talking about, what you're doing the right thing. And to do the right thing, you have to, jump around and be creative about stuff because there's shitheads, in the way from keeping you from doing what is morally right. And as you said, the people, our ancestors, everything before us, they try to make a better life, and they did a great job of it. Now we have this poison. You don't drink poison just because you're thirsty, but everybody's getting to that point of drinking that poison because they don't know or see any different, and the amount of good people like yourself is so small comparative to the people that just they don't even care, at this point.
I believe, remember, did you ever see the movie Gladiator?
Oh, yeah.
Remember when he said to his troops before they went into battle against the Germanic tribes, he said, what you do in this life echoes in eternity? I believe that with all my heart. I believe life is eternal, and I believe what you do or you fail to do here echoes in eternity. So how do you want to live out your life? Do you want to live it out honorably, or do you want to live it out shamefully, knowing that you are no good for nothing son of a gun that fed off of society and let every child out there continue to get exploited and abused? Or you're not the guy that helped the homeless, or you're not the guy that tried to make your country better, or in our case, when we went to war, right, to defend the country against terrorism, you're the guy that chickened out to do the right thing like you're talking about. And I think when it comes to society, we probably have fewer shepherds than we do sheep.
Yeah, I think, we've had so many kind of off-camera moments and conversations, or even just started alluding to other conversations. I see it so much. one of our jobs is here is just, create content and all these things because, so much that's how people absorb their, information, and it's through social media now. It's not, turning on the TV and seeing a news outlet or whatever. It's mostly through, YouTube videos or paid advertising through, one of the big, Insta faces or any of those, social medias. But I think we were talking about it earlier, like, and you just kind of nailed it. So many people are wrapped up in this, thankfully we don't have it, like this social credit score, and only projecting inwardly of like, how am I going to look to my peers? What do people think that I'm doing with my life? And how can I, project all these kind of, false, images or stories of what I'm doing with myself. So I think there's a lot of inaccuracies in how people represent themselves, and then also just a lot of just false, false actions. So, a good example, and we discussed this, maybe some other groups that go out to say, hey, we rescue kids too, but they go and grab them from one situation, exploit them for the cameras, and then just drop them off and be like, thanks, we got ours. It's like imagine if the USPCA, like they grabbed a dog out of the shelter, they got Sarah McLachlan to do the song, and then they just go ahead and and then they just go ahead and just put him in a dog fight ring. It's like, thanks.
Well, they probably do.
And then
right?
and then so they're double dipping on money.
So are they fighting Sarah McLachlan?
It's her dogs, well, her cats. Of course. So and maybe that's a stretch, but I think there's a lot of that from high levels to low. So it's like individuals are more, well, how can this make me look? Or is somebody going to know that I did something to help, rather than the silent kind of either contributor or silent warrior in the corner that's like actively doing things. So
Doing your job, like we've been talking about. You're not there for the accolades. I'm not there for the pat on the back. We do what we do because it's the right thing, and
Because it's the right thing, you're exactly right.
and something you said that we talked on yesterday that really resonates with me is I always tell my guys that your morals should match what you want your legacy to be.
Mm-hmm.
And with what you're saying about, and we talked on this yesterday, these children, you never know, one of these kids that you go in and grab and save their life, you never know who they could be one day if there's not individuals and groups that, like you put together, that are actually going and doing the moral right thing and shutting down these turds that are taking these kids. Never know, this might be the next one of those kids might be one of the next greatest leaders that we've ever had.
Absolutely. Well, we always say, a lot of people, when they ask, they'll talk about, well, how many kids did you rescue? Trust me, there are some groups out there that go, we rescued 2,000 kids this year. And I go, whoa, how'd you do that? Look, we've been around since 1993. We're probably the oldest running child rescue organization in the United States, or one of them. It's very complicated in the United States to rescue a lot of kids. Now, if you've got an army of 3,000 operators, you could probably do it. So, when I hear big numbers, I actually start kind of wondering, okay, how, where, I'd love to see the files. Did you find them all in one warehouse, all 2,000 of them, or did you actually do the work, or, whatever it may be. And we are finding that there's a lot of money to be made by NGOs on government grants. A lot of organizations have really good marketing teams.
And NGOs,
non-government organizations, yeah. Or nonprofits that have access to grant writers and grant money, and they've created an extraordinary business model off of trafficking, just the opposite of the perpetrator. So whereas the perpetrator has a kid and is selling them or exploiting them on the streets, the non-government organizations, not all, but a lot, are actually telling people they're doing things, and when you look behind the veil, they're not doing them, but they're making great paychecks.
They've got hot chicks on Instagram and booty shorts.
Yeah. There's no federal oversight to say, how does the money being spent?
Right.
We only know that from personal experiences that I mentioned earlier at the White House. But when you take government money, then the government dictates how you run your operations as well. So remaining under the radar a lot, and oftentimes, like you were talking about, Patrick, not really taking credit for a lot of things. That's really funny. We've actually seen people on TV and had conversations where they claim to do certain rescues that we did, and we're laughing at each other. We go, I don't remember that. I don't remember that guy. Do you remember that guy?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe he was in disguise. Maybe they did the rescue and we just thought we did the rescue or whatever. So we've learned that, very much like what you're saying, Patrick, you know, why do we do it? Do we do it because we're looking for a thank you? No. We do it because if we do not, then who will? And so this is what we tell the rest of America. You know, if you're waiting for somebody else to go save the life of a child, it's not going to get done until boots are on the ground, where you physically go put your hands on that child and bring them to safety. It doesn't get done. Like, excuse me, remember when they started doing all the pictures on the milk cartons of the missing kids, right? It's a great idea.
I think Walmart still has a wall of like, have you
Do
seen
they?
these?
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing about that, and hopefully we've had great success with it, but most of the time we haven't. You know, someone sees the picture on the milk carton, they see the picture, and they think, and it makes them feel good that they see the picture on the milk carton, and they think that they're doing something about it by seeing the picture on the milk carton. But you know what happens at the end of the day? The milk carton goes in the garbage. Did they actually physically go out on the street and really search for that kid? No, but they felt good about themselves because they saw the picture, right? We never want to be like that. You can't be like, that's not reality. It's smoke and mirrors and stuff like that. I'm not saying that what they were doing is a bad idea. I think it is, on the chance that someone remembers the picture and sees the child. But again, children don't come home until you put some concerted effort into it and figure out, what can I do about this? Now, not everybody can go rescue kids. I get that. People have jobs, they have things to do, but we have to ask ourselves this: when you know how we prioritize things in our lives, and we prioritize things in our nation, like the defense of the nation, then the economic spending, and then what it may be. I think every individual has to prioritize in their life what's important. Are we honoring our ancestors with the way we live our life? And what do we want to do about the future of our nation when it comes to innocent people? And honestly, Brian, I wish I could say that everybody had what we have inside of us to go out there and just do the right thing, but I'm not seeing it all the time.
The moral compass just in the world,
Spinning, man.
it's just like,
It's bent sideways.
Yeah.
and there's so few people, it's hard to even decipher what is the right thing. You should know inside of you, but it's been so convoluted and diluted over time that it seems as though people just don't even
I think
know
it's
which
like,
way.
it's just one little bite at a time, right? So it's like a thief. They steal a pack of gum for the first time, they get away with it, and like,
You
oh,
open a bite at a time, yeah.
and it's you know, next time it's a pair of shoes, next time it's a car, next time it's whatever. So I think, you know, just as a society, it's, you know, and you can, you know, tie this into with any kind of moral value lane we want to go down. It's just, you know, things have gotten, you know, we've had a couple meals now into, you know, where things were even just 100 years ago, and to where, you know, seeing whether it's pornography, if it's you know, violence, you know, the way people treat each other. I mean, that's just such a big thing. You know, just common courtesy, manners, things like that. Like, that's, who holds doors open for anybody anymore, or just dumb stuff, you know, or who, you know, goes and shakes hands or anymore, things like that. And I'm not talking about COVID, you know, pre-COVID. You know, it's just all the, you know, kind of dumb things that we think about. Like, I think a lot of that's gone. You know, we're just actively,
Because we've gotten lazy.
yeah.
It
sure.
takes another 2 seconds. Everybody's always in a hurry. It takes another 2 seconds to open a door. Chivalry, they say, is dead. Like pulling a chair out for a girl. Apparently not supposed to. I'm 36 and
Yeah,
single,
it's
so-
man, stop throwing your alpha masculinity out.
Oh yeah. Don't be
Don't chat me,
fighting
bro.
and doing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do any of that. Have an electric car, all that. It's just gotten lazy. That compass, the needle is just bent, and the more and more things just continue to be, everything's okayed now. Everybody's fine with it just being sloughed off. That just then becomes the way.
So, with experience of traveling a lot,
Right.
do you feel like that's the same way elsewhere as well, other countries? And I mean, just different. Do you feel like it's just a worldwide problem, and just the time is, that's kind of where we're at in the cycle of things? Or do you feel like the U.S. is kind of the vanguard of leading us to this, kind of a downward spiral?
Yeah, it's a global problem. People around the world now want to live in the gray. And people are afraid that if they say it's black or white, meaning, whatever it may be.
They're married to that idea for the rest of their life.
Like I can't, so I'm just going to stay in the middle.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, there is a difference between what's right and wrong. Make no doubt about it, and I stand on it 100%. Most people know what's right and they know what's wrong. Someone steals somebody's car. Why do they steal it at night where they can't get caught? Because they know it's wrong. Someone abuses a child and they don't want anybody to know about it. Why do they do their deeds in the dark or hidden? Because they know it's wrong. Inside here, they know it's wrong. And you also know what's right. So when we have conspiracy theories or we have corruption or people aren't telling the whole story out of Washington, D.C., why do we think it's not being told?
I feel like as someone, I would say I'm outside of the bubble of
Sure.
it. So where, this is your life. So, but you see all these things like the Epstein thing is so easy to poke at. Like there's this island, like there's all this, evidence and all these things, but then there's not. And, Epstein didn't kill himself. So it's like, we know about this. It's told to us. Like it's in our face, but then it's kind of just dismissed as like, oh no, that's not important. That's not
Right.
real.
Nobody's held accountable for
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No one's
that's
being
the
held
best way.
accountable for it because we live in a broken judicial system. And I think that the people at the highest levels of justice think that we don't know that. I think that people in power, so to speak, think that the average American is stupid. And they forget that the average patriot in the 1700s wasn't that stupid. And those were our forefathers, and then we're not that stupid. What happens is they keep pushing and pushing and pushing in a broken judicial system where there's no accountability, and people, I think, are actually getting tired of it. Look, if a father's 4-year-old daughter gets taken by a predator and she's brutally molested, and for some of God's grace, he gets her back, and that guy stands up in front of the news or in the court and says, I'm going to kill that guy, I understand that. I understand that.
Slow clap,
Unashamedly,
yeah.
that father, like me, if I had children, I'd say, you want to put me away for prison? You better do it now
they're
because
cool, yeah.
that guy is not going to live. Well, why does he do that way? Is it because he's infuriated? It's more than just being infuriated. He realizes that justice isn't going to get served, and that pedophile or that predator is going to end up on the street in 2 years and is going to do the same thing because he lives in a broken system. Now, will that system ever get fixed? I don't know.
Do you
I think
think?
it's gonna have to come from the ground up, personally.
Right.
And doing what you do, fingers crossed. With what we were talking about earlier, some of these kids come up and uproot it because right now it's so just jacked up at the top that who knows what it would take to make that change up there. We're gonna have to, unfortunately, I think, go through some really rough times until people start to not just see but feel and experience what right is again, what those morals, why we were founded on such
Right.
things.
It's okay to not answer this question,
Sure.
and I'm not. My goal isn't to fearmonger, or to speculate, or anything like that. Like, nobody wants war. Nobody wants World War III. No one wants a civil war, and I'm not alluding
Right.
to that at all. But as far as coming from someone, and I'd say to both of you, within the intelligence community and kind of the clearances and the things that you've seen and people you spoke to, like, when do you think kind of the American people are going to say, or do you think they ever will? Like, enough is enough, and like, how the hell is that ever going to change? You know, because I think right now the general is like, well, you know, the powerful are power, and they're just going to continue to keep consolidating more power, and they'll do whatever the hell they want, because, you know, the rule for, you know, for me is, or what is it? It's not for me, but for thee, or whatever. So they're untouchable, right? So, I mean, do we, you know, short of bringing everyone out and tarring and feathering in the streets, like, I mean, again, you don't have to answer, but I mean, do you see there being any type of breakthrough or change, or is it, you know, we try to do it through the political system and hopefully people stay true to maybe their original good intentions?
Yeah. You know, after being in a company that overthrew a lot of small governments, I get to watch that play out a lot over history. And I think what happens, the downfall of the elite, so to speak, and I'm not saying that, you know, there are people that have private businesses that have done very, very well for themselves. That's not the category we're talking about. We're probably talking about elite globalists, people that want to rule the world. They want two classes. They want the elite and they want everybody else to be poor, basically a socialist system of sorts. I think that they make their mistake in the arrogance that they carry in their pockets, and they are blinded by the fact that they are actually not as powerful as they believe they are. They're powerful enough as long as they can speak words or put words on paper and say, you must abide by these words. Like, you know, when we had all this stuff during the Trump administration about equity and diversity and someone's emotions are getting hurt because somebody called them a name or whatever. You can't legislate morality. You know, that's like trying to legislate earthquakes. You can't do it, and yet we think we can do it, or we lead people to believe we can do it. Very much like you're saying, Patrick, you know, people have to have a moral compass so they have a good heart, and that starts early on where you teach people, treat other people fairly. Make them work hard, but be fair with all those people, be courteous, be kind, all of these things which we don't teach anymore. Nor do we teach constitutional law. The interesting thing about our forefathers and the divine intervention of creating the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is has stood the test of time, to the point that the people in our country realize that the power that they have for their freedom, so to speak, rests in that document, or those documents, so to speak. So to answer your question, as we listen to the rumblings throughout America, at least I do. I'm not a part of any major militia or anything. I'm just me. I'm just a guy. I mean, I don't go to those meetings, but I listen. And here would be my warning, so to speak, or my prediction to those that would ever try to create a socialist system here in America, or continue with their corruption, or continue to screw the American people over like it's being done, is that take a look around. You're outnumbered. There are a lot of Americans here that have had downrange time, and they're not afraid to defend their rights at all. You can call them terrorists like the British called people in 1776.
Oh, they've already started doing that.
Yeah. You can call them crazy. You can call them whatever they want to call them. But when you start to take the food out of the mouth of their families, or you try to break the back of the economy so that people become subservient to you, those people, and history has shown this, can, will, and do have the ability to rise up at the most unpredictable time and put an end to tyranny. This is what we were founded on. Now, a lot of people listening to this will just be scoff and laugh and go, oh, that's something out of a movie. Really? Look, civil war is a horrible thing. War is a horrible thing. We pray that it never comes to our nation. It would make it, it'd just be too ugly. Yeah. But if it comes, you won't have to look for it. It'll end up on your doorstep. The first time somebody walks in to confiscate your guns, first time somebody says you can't buy or sell, you got to go stand in a bread line, the first time gas prices become $15 a gallon if they do, and now you can't go anywhere, or people start saying you can't read your Bible or you can't believe in the Constitution, whatever, it will ignite the fuse to civil war, and they won't stop here. They will go directly to the people that they're targeting, and those people will have no place to hide. It's just, I mean, this is what I've seen, country after country of country that has fallen by, some dictator trying to take over, and it catches them off guard. And so here in America, do we want to see it happen? Never. Am I advocating that happens? Not at all, because it's just terrible. But if you try to take our freedoms, if you try to take our constitutional right away from us, I think most Americans will fight to the bloody end.
I sure hope so. And, with all those people, the naysayers are the ones that want to push that awful agenda that's just being force-fed down all of us. And you mentioned it, in numerous different countries, you've seen the same thing time and time again. We've been to a lot of the same countries. I would like to, and I'll drive the bus right there. Come with me. Come with me. See what I saw. Spend a week in my head. See what I've seen. Pick up pieces of your buddies and put them in your pockets and see how you feel when you get back. Do you still think that? Do you think college should be free? No. Earn it. Do you think that should be free? No. Earn it. Everything, every day you should get up and you should be thankful to be here. I know for myself, and I'll say thank you, Judge Chuck Vanover, for helping me out 18 years ago. I was looking at a 5.5 to 7 year prison sentence for
Stealing donuts, right?
Yes,
Donuts,
for
right.
attempted murdering of donuts. So it was not looking good for me. My dad was he was chief of police of Colleyville. Prior to that, Chuck was his best friend's son, and they fortunately saw some good in me. My mom still says it. She says, I'm so thankful for what you do now, the military part, not the motorcycles, because I'd be putting money in your account in Huntsville, maximum.
Yeah. Got commissary,
Yeah. So I had to have a big coming to Jesus moment, if you will. And that even took me a while. At no point in the numerous times that I have been put in jail was because I was doing a good thing. And it took a while to shake that out of me. I was wild. Then I got big into meditation, breath work, and honestly, just reading the Bible, things like that, to all the things that stood true thousands and thousands of years ago do to this day. To include, I read a lot of Marcus Aurelius, and so many of the problems that you can just hear in the flexion in his voice or in what he's writing, the same thing. And I just wish that you and I could just charter a plane, take people over, and see, especially what we were talking about yesterday, the eyes of the kids. I've seen plenty of kids and things like that overseas, or in St. Jude, where there's still that life to them. And what you said yesterday, that was just.
Man, I think there's two things that are worth re-noting again that we had discussed kind of offline. Was one, I think you had mentioned a young girl in Afghanistan that you saw maybe on one deployment, and you saw them again like a year or two later, and it's just like how tired and how broken they are. And then same thing like with the kids and all that. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on some of those, just kind of paint a better picture of what happens.
I think what sparked that was I'm just curious about your span of career and all the amazing things that you've done that we've talked about, but what was your why to? Because what a 180 from like this to
humanitarian stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's still
we were talking about that. Yeah, I loved. And we talked. Look, there was nothing better and cooler than being a CIA paramilitary case officer, special operations, as you know, and as you know in the Marine Corps. We do a lot of really cool stuff that a lot of people will never do or never get to do, and we were blessed to come back from it and everything. But when we rescued those two little girls in Mogadishu, and I got back to the States and started wondering what was happening to children. And at that time in 1993, there were 250,000 missing, and they weren't a priority. I can remember for probably a good 10 years of my life that when it was rescuing children, that, and you can cap on this with what you saw in Afghanistan and the aging process, but when I would be around normal children, well, I was a child, I wasn't very normal, so I guess I don't know. But anyway, happy children. How yeah. I was telling the guy, every spanking I got, I deserved. I probably deserved more, But the children that were happy and had great families and great homes and stuff, there's life in their eyes, and they're happy and they giggle and they're playful. And I remember some of the children that I rescued, very young, under 5, and they would stand in front of you, lifeless and somewhat traumatized and in shock, right in the moment that you had found them in a closet, or you had found them in the back trunk of a car, or you found them anywhere in an abused condition, tied up, literally chained up, sometimes with stuff. And you kneel down in front of them, and you would look in their eyes first to try to get some kind of response. And when you would look at them and say, "We're here to take you to a safe place," you would expect them to smile, you would expect them to wrap their arms around you, to feel protected, and they do. It's strange enough, every child that we've gone after just comes to us, but on a couple of occasions I remember looking into their eyes, and it was just lifeless. There was no soul, there was no energy, there was nothing coming from inside them. Generally when you interact with another human being, you look them in the eye when we talk, and you can see life. You can feel the life. You can feel the exchange. And what was so sad is literally they were like corpses, just standing there, just lifeless. And that comes from all the sexual abuse and exploitation. We always say, how do you murder a child without killing them? You sexually exploit them. It destroys their soul, their life's energy, everything. And, excuse me, as much as I would like to tell the world that once you save them and you get them in aftercare, that it all gets fixed, it all goes away. And this is what courts think sometimes. But guess what? Probably close to 90% of the time, it doesn't. They're damaged to the rest of life. They die every single day. If they live to be adults, they literally die every single day. So when I see a court case where, you have a child that's been abused or whatever, and there's a light sentencing on a predator, it disturbs me. Because quite frankly, and I'm very bold about this when it comes to legislative action, I believe that the punishment for child sexual exploitation should be the death penalty. Every predator that I have talked to that's been behind bars, and I have asked them the same question over and over, I've said, what's the one thing that would have deterred you from molesting that little boy or that little girl? Every single one has said, well, if I thought I was going to get the death sentence, I probably would have thought twice. But I'm going to get 7 and I'll be out in 3. And they're right. Guess what? They get sentenced for 7, sometimes less than that. They're out in 3, maybe sometimes less than that. They go right back out there and they do it. Predators will tell you, they'll say, look, you need to know. And there are some that are very honest. They'll say, you need to know, if you let me out of here, I'm going to go do it again. It's kind of like all those incidences of criminals that Governor Newsom let out of California. The minute they got out of prison, guess what they went and did?
Oh, yeah.
Murdered, robbed, killed, whatever it may be. So
It's just ingrained them at that point.
What's that?
It's just ingrained in them at that point.
It becomes, so it's it's a sad thing. Those children, like the children in Afghanistan that you were talking about, you see them when they're like 5, and then you see a girl like 2 or 3 years later,
Oh, yeah.
after she's been sold into sex trafficking, and she looks like she's 45 or 60. It's crazy.
terrible. Yeah, you see these kids, and it's just beautiful little kids with
Yeah.
blue eyes, dark hair, beautiful little kids, and then you see them happy, but at the same time, like I remember just sitting there, like in some of the compounds, and just watching them just kind of do their thing, and I'm like, man, like, unfortunately, your days are numbered.
Yeah.
Because it's just gonna happen, and that makes me kind of go back to earlier in the conversation. Like, it makes me look inward. I'm like, you know what in me? Why wasn't I thinking at that time, like, what can I do to change this? That is their culture. That's just where my head went. So is that what people in the United States are thinking at this point when they see, these signs and stuff that I will imagine expand into a little bit more, but like see this and they're like, it's just what happens at this point. Is that where we are? And
Yeah.
if so, that's unfortunate. It
is.
bad.
It's like our foster care system in America. People know about the foster care and they think, oh, kids have a place to go.
I just saw a
It's
stat.
horrible.
It's like 80 or 90% of trafficked kids are coming from foster care.
Exactly. We
It's
run into these
insane.
cases constantly.
That makes sense, yes.
And
Yeah.
on the corruption side of thing, I won't tell you what state it's in or what is, but like a 3-letter agency gave us a case and said, you need to run with this because we can't do this internally because we have so much corruption in our ranks. I said, sure, we'll run with it. This is a case of a former law enforcement officer who's been working with CPS, Child Protective Services, for 30 years. In a scam to have children delivered to him for sexual exploitation and the sale of minors. And so what happens is CPS will find a single mom. They'll discredit her in front of the court, saying she's crazy, she can't take care of her kid, whatever it may be. They become a ward of the state, and then, of course, they turn it over to this guy. He has his way with them as long as he wants to have it, and then children get sold off. Who knows what happens? They might get buried. I mean, we're working on that case now. But when you look at that, that's a very well-organized scam. But why children of all things? Why children? I mean, talk about perversion within our ranks. I mean, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And yet, it is. We're adults. I mean, we've been downrange. It's like, okay, you want to do something, do it to me. Do it to me. I can fend for myself. But to do it to a child, in this case we're talking anyone under 18 years old, and to do those horrible things to them when they can't defend themselves, it's wrong. It's just wrong. And America needs to know what's happening every single day. Even if you don't see it, it's happening every single, even if the media doesn't cover it. See, we only think that if CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever covers something, it's happening. But all the other stuff that's happening that they don't cover, it doesn't exist in our head. And that in itself is wrong because we need to be aware, situational awareness, right? We need to be aware of what's going on now. Let's say we're in Dallas-Fort Worth, right? I don't expect people in Dallas-Fort Worth to be able to take care of missing and exploited children in Ohio or California now. But what about your neighborhood? What about Dallas-Fort Worth? What's going on here? Are you setting an example that tells every predator in the state of Texas, you don't touch our children here? Because if you do, you're going to burn. That's where it starts right there.
DFW is one of the worst spots.
What's that, Brian?
Like DFW, all that is one of the worst spots.
It has its moments, yeah.
So the Afghan thing. So Time magazine actually had a picture of, it was in like a red hood, just big, bright blue, beautiful eyes, Afghani girl. And it was like, I forget what the title was. It was just something,
I remember.
Yeah, most beautiful girl or beauty in war or something like that. Just for those, kind of listening, just do yourself a favor and Google that photo now and what she is now. It is not the same person. Like,
Yeah.
and that's someone who I would almost say got exploited. You know, they took that photo. They said, "Hey, you know, we're causing some awareness, right? To look at the beauty in this, and you know, those kids are affected and all that." But same thing happened to her. You know, she's lived multiple lives, and you can see that.
Yeah.
But
Just their life out there in general is hard. Yeah, without all the everything else. I mean, you've seen them, all their irrigation. They don't have bulldozers and things like that. It's a hard existence, and that's going to age you just in itself. And then you have that being, and it's the only life that unfortunately they know too. They just grow to accept the fact that mom and dad are going to sell me at this point.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We go in terms of rescuing children. Most people are like, well, that's just one child. It's like
every
you know
40
what?
seconds
So
a kid goes missing.
Right, exactly. So it's like, and we always tell people, look, for you rescue one child, it's not going to change the world, but for that one child, their entire world changes. So you got to start somewhere. And I tell people all the time, especially after we do our equipping courses, I go, just go rescue one kid and see what happens in your life. You know why a lot of people won't? Because they know what will happen. They know the convictions will run through them like thick blood. And they'll have to be doing something. It means they have to change their lifestyle. Look, when we started doing this, if I could run a tea company, I'd be happy as a pig in mud. You know, I could ride a Harley, like I've done many years. Happy, buddy. Yes, like that. But I can't live with myself when I'm called to go save children, no more than I could live with myself if I didn't help the little old lady across the street and she got hit by a car. It's like, then I have to look at myself and go, what kind of person am I? And so much to what you're saying and what you're alluding to, Brian, is that a lot of the world compromises and they don't care about their moral compass. They don't care about presenting themselves as a good human being, or in this case, as an American. Look, we grew up in a country of Americans, okay? Now look at what our forefathers did. These were honorable people. Yeah, there's going to be all these people go, well, yeah, he did this and he owned some slaves, and look, and you want to talk about that subject, almost every culture I know has been in slavery around the world somewhere. I mean,
This still goes on.
the Israelites were enslaved by the Egyptians, and people were enslaved in the Middle East. And I mean, the first slaves in America were Irish children. They were the very first that nobody talks about, little kids. Once again, kids, right? So I think, and much credit to President Trump, God bless him, when he talked about making America great again, I think he was digging into the roots to say, look, remember what Americans are. We're not African Americans. We're not Asian Americans. We're not Irish Americans. Look, half my black American friends never even been to Africa. And half my Asian American friends, as they keep going, have never been there. Wouldn't look like it, they don't even know. So how about this? I mean, this is a novel idea. How about you're an American?
It's you go to the UK and they're like, "What do you mean you're a black American?" You're like, I'm British. Or like,
Yeah.
And we're the only ones that are.
I mean, it'd be like, it was the Dallas Cowboys, right? Mm-hmm. What if the three of us came on and we wore jerseys and half was the 49ers and half was the Dallas Cowboys, and we showed up for practice and went, we're 49 Cowboys.
Yeah.
You think that they would let us on the team? No, because they don't know where our allegiance is, right? So when you're anything but just an American, personally, for guys that have been downrange, it's like, where's your allegiance? Is it to the Constitution? Is it to the country? Whatever. Because I'm going to tell you something, and you know this as well as I do. Every one of my buddies that I drug out of the ditches, they all bled the same color. I don't care what their skin color was, we all bled the same color. Those are our brothers and our sisters. And this is why you have a really strong allegiance, mostly in the, in the military. If we could get Americans to wrap their head around all of that, we'd have fewer problems in America.
Yeah, I think it's they don't, they try to be careful of like, oh well, we don't want this nationalism and all that, but I think it is okay to be proud of, you know, of where you are. And that doesn't mean it's superior to something else. You know, you could be proud of your culture, you know, your religious preferences. You can be proud of, hell, that you like musicals, whatever. Like, that doesn't make you superior. So I think whether that's been weaponized or lost or whatever, you know, that's kind of what we've been doing. It's like, no, if you're proud to be American, that means that you're, you know, going down this weird fascist, like, you know, an oppressive thing. And it's not, you know, I think we've kind of always recognized ourselves as being, you know, the great melting pot. And, you know, the U.S. is so big, you know, compared to just the European and just all these countries. You know, it's like, how much can fit here? The size of Texas is bigger than most of Europe. You know, it's just, there's so many cultures that, you know, I think we don't even think about anymore, but that we appreciate and that we are accustomed to. Think about just food. You know, you can go get pizza, tacos, burgers, you know, Indian food, like everything like that, and it's like. And I know that's just kind of a silly example, but it's like, you know, we're appreciating, whether we're adapting these cultures to us or not, like we're appreciating other cultures and we don't think about it anymore. But when it comes to being proud that we are kind of this weird, hot mess, but awesome hodgepodge of everything, like then it's a problem. And, you know, now we're nationalists and, you know, oppressive. But so I know I got just bombarded with it to death. And I know you guys went through some really high levels of training with it, but just the situational awareness, but mostly involving human trafficking. So, man, whenever I think of like the human trafficking, and I always wanted like to tell people, go watch that Liam Neeson movie, Taken, at least the first one. Like I thought that was such a, I mean, it's dramatized, things like that, but it was such a good example of how something simple as a girl going in the mall and going to a modeling kiosk. Hey, you're a pretty girl. We have, you know, get some free headshots here. To a whatever location you meet here. Next thing you know, like, oh, well, we're going to move you over here. So now you're getting moved around in a kind of a, you know, a van with people you don't really know, and maybe it's a female that's coming. Next thing you know, you're coming to a party, you know, for everybody that was a part of it. Now you're drugged. Now, next thing you know, you wake up and you're in somewhere 12 hours away, whatever. I thought that movie was kind of interesting, kind of painted that picture, and, you know, I'm not saying we, you know, are all able to go and Liam Neeson the situation, but I guess as far as for people listening and for the process, like if we can kind of elaborate on how children, I guess of all age groups, like how you see people that kind of either on their own accord or because I think you kind of said it earlier, like a lot of them they're running away from something or to something.
Right.
So if you can kind of elaborate on that and like how some of these kids find themselves in situations and then how they end up just becoming lost, because we know it's not by just random chance, like it's by these big networks of very well organized just machines that just chew these kids up.
Yeah, well, you're right. You touched on something like my director of human trafficking, Tina Paulson, always says that children are running away from something or they're running to something. And most of the time, a lot of children that are missing or go missing, it starts actually in their home. Hands down, they have really horrible family lives. And this is generally where I blame a lot of parents for not, you know, they have children and it's like, okay, be a parent, take care of your children, be there for them. You know, a child can, you know, a lot of times parents are so busy with their own lives, they don't know what their kid's looking at on the computer. So the computer, there's a kid in the room every night talking to a predator who's, maybe it's a 10-year-old girl and she thinks she's talking to a 10-year-old boy and he's a 35-year-old man or a 42-year-old woman or whatever it may be. And they lure them. They just slowly lure them to the point where they can get a personal meeting with them. You know, anytime you tell, I mean, for people out there that have children, you know how it is. If you tell them they can't do something, they always want to do it, you know, or if you're a child that, you know, isn't that well off and your friends have, you know, the latest leather boots and you've got somebody online that says, hey, I can get you those leather boots. or wouldn't you like this nice car, or blah, blah, whatever it may be. And they get them in a face-to-face in a very compromising position. And if they want to run them in place, so to speak, or traffic them in place, they just say, look, you tell your parents, we'll kill your parents. Okay, you're going to work for me. Every day when you get off school at 3 o'clock, you're going to tell your parents you're going to the library, but for the next 4 hours, you're mine. And they're being trafficked. So it happens like that. There are targets of opportunity. Mother in the park out watching her kids. Guy runs up, swoops them up, throws them in a van, goes. That happens. Children run away from home. Maybe a teenager seeking a better life, just like you said, Brian. You know, like, hey, we got this great modeling job. Come meet the casting director. And they show up at XYZ building, and the next thing you know, they're gone. So the Liam Neeson show was fairly accurate. I mean, I don't know if I could personally like kill 4 guys.
How many phone calls like that have you made?
Yeah, I'd have to make a lot. I just call you guys in and go, hey, we're going here. You got to go with me. But generally speaking, and then there's the drug issue.
Sure.
There's kids that get on drugs and then they get taken advantage of. Basically, in a nutshell, if there's no oversight on children and they don't feel like they're being loved or cared for, these are very vulnerable children. And that's what we see the majority of them. Like, no matter what the circumstances are. It is very sophisticated. There's a book called Pimping 101, which you can get online, right?
That's Snoop
And you
Dogg,
can
right?
learn
It
how
sounds
to-
like 2 short songs.
it's-
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, it's a business book. It's like, how do you pimp?
Yeah.
What's the psychology behind pimping? Is it like, it's kind of like walking up to Patrick and going, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Patrick. And he gets closer and I hit him again. So, oh, no, I didn't mean it. Come here. It really screws with your head, right? It's kind of like when you went through
It
buds.
hurt my feelings.
I'm sorry. For your feelings. Exactly. And he wasn't tough enough, I couldn't punch him. But, so there's this very abusive, very codependent kind of psychology that gets played out till basically you've stripped them of all their self-esteem and then you own them. So the methodology is, it's been around for a long, long time. It's like kind of being in SEER school or, someone breaking you. And that's what they do. They literally break these kids to the point of submission. And then after that, their own. Now here's the other thing about it is, once these children have been in this position for a long time and no one has come to rescue them or help them, they lose hope. There's no way out. Even to the point, we just had an amazing case that broke last night that we helped orchestrate with Homeland Security. And as it was unfolding over the course of the last 3 weeks to get this girl out, she was reluctant to leave, even though an advocate that my director of human trafficking was coaching was known to her. She didn't know who she could trust. Why? Because how many times has some guy walked into her hotel room and said, I can get you out of here. And then she goes, please do. And then her pimp comes in and it was a setup. And he beats the crap out of her and says, I was just testing you. So they go through that kind of stuff as well. So it took 3 weeks before she realized that these were the real people that were coming to help her. And of course, there's a girl saved there. But she is like probably 2% of all the kids in America that have an organization like ours get involved, or people like yourselves, to say, no, we're the real deal. I'm going to be here. I'm going to save your life. We're going to get the job done. And then you actually get them out and everything. So there are these very sophisticated, we have people that have actually been auctioned off. We've had people murdered. For example, a lot of traffickers now are doing witness disposal because they realize that some of the people they've trafficked will actually testify against them. We have, their trauma's being cleared, and they don't want that to happen. So when you look at the law changing, one of the things we fight against in defense of innocent children also are things in legislation. For example, there's a lot of people in Washington DC, along with the LGBTQXYZ group. I don't know what they're going to be next, but anyway. And trust me, when I say that, I know people that I've worked with in the film industry that are gay, and I don't have anything a problem with them, but I do have a problem with that organization, particularly when it pushes.
I don't think it's particularly helpful to any one of those letters, to be honest. Like,
What's that?
I don't think it's particularly helpful to any of those actual parties. Like, it's more damaging than good, and I think there's a lot of inner fighting with that.
Yeah.
And it distracts from accepting these people for who they are. But
Right, exactly. So when they're pushing for things like, okay, a pedophile that's just their gender, and that's the way they were born.
Insane.
And they should be able to have their way with children. I don't agree with that. And then they push this on the Hill, and there are actually people, and America needs to know this, there are actually senators in Washington DC that push this agenda that pedophilia should be okay, that it's.
love is love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
That shit-
exactly. Like
burns
Lambda
me.
and all those other things, right? So this is normal. Now, people have always asked me many times, why do you think that this perverse type of thinking could even come about? I'll tell you what I think. I believe that there are people in positions of authority, senators, congressmen, whatever, that are pedophiles. In fact, I don't believe it. I know it. Okay? You float in our circle long enough, you get to know the truth, the ground truth. And they know that if they ever get caught with a child, they're going to go to prison. They might get a light sentence because they're powerful people, but they know that. So if they can get the law changed, then guess what? They get caught with a child, they can go, oh, well, it's a disease I have. I can take some medication for it. I can see a doctor. They won't go to prison. They fear that and everything. So when you look at what they're pushing, it makes absolutely no sense at all that you would allow anybody to say it's okay to sexually molest or rape a child. And yet, they want us to believe that. And I guess what? I'm never going to believe it.
Man, it's so hard to wrap that up.
I don't know how people can ever, in anything, every time, each story, anything that we have spoken on, even when it's us reiterating things, because more than likely, we've blown up a bunch and we've forgotten, we reiterate it, it just sits right here with me and infuriates
Crawls at
me.
you, man.
And when I think about higher up people in that, yes, this guy down here that's snatching up the kid, you're a piece of crap. You up here, in my eyes, you're worse, and I wish I could string you up by your toes, hang you out in front of everybody, and let them take care of, let the good people take care of them, because that stuff, it just,
I don't
feel
buy it.
myself stuttering. It makes me so mad, man.
I mean, it's tough, but it's one of those things too where, I mean, we can't just all don our plate carriers and battle rattle and go and like as much as like violence isn't the answer. Like that's all you can think about, because it's so.
Morals have to sometimes
man
take over, but again, back to the beginning of our conversation, like how do we do that when this guy that sits behind a big desk with his gavel is touching kids and he's the one that's making the rules now?
Well, how do you explain to younger generations when somebody in a very high position gets away with things that they've been caught evidence and it's a crime and they've seen it on TV and they know it's a crime and they're not idiots and they get away with it, then what are we sending the message to our kids? It's like, this is okay to do this. And it's not okay, and we know. And yet, very much like you're saying, the low guy on the totem pole is usually the guy that goes to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know we're all good and pissed off.
Go figure.
I'm all wound up. I gotta go.
It's like being sent to fight a war, and they go, you can't fight. We're going to tie one hand behind your back, and you're going to get prosecuted if you shoot the enemy.
No, there is no war. What are you talking
Oh,
about?
of course, that's right.
It's just like, it's the way helicopters go. You get ready to go like do something really good, and you're sitting out on the tarmac, and then it breaks. And you're like, well, what do I do with the 10 Rippets that I just drank and the coffee that I had before that? Like, I'm going.
I'll run there. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, for the people listening, you are out, boots on ground and doing work, and it's not kicking in doors or things like that. It's more true clandestine information and technology based, like because you don't want to cause more trauma to these children, guns blazing, things like that. So, but you are doing the work. So for people, like us and listening, like, we have our donation, we kind of are, we're raffling off this motorcycle, raffling off the guns, things like that. So, people can donate by entering to win those. So we'll have, areas to collect and things like that go to that cause. But I guess from you, like, how else can people get involved to help ARC's mission and kind of continue that fight and grow, that your team to, I guess, and to save more kids?
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, we always need the help. We're trying to expand. With that many children missing, it's our objective to force multiply and grow bigger as far as at least our operations center is concerned. We're always getting resumes from Tier 1 operators, people that are qualified. We certainly welcome those, even though we may not at this moment be able to offer them an operation, or because it takes a lot of vetting. Like we don't go in armed. I mean, if we go to Syria and we're going up against ISIS to get some kids out, then we would, we'd wear battle gear. But in the United States, we generally aren't armed at all. We use a lot of tradecraft that I learned in the agency to look for a window of opportunity to safely and carefully extract the child, even when the predator doesn't even know. And we've been doing it that way for a long time, and it's been working pretty good. So we're not necessarily kicking in a door. And I get a lot of resumes from door kickers. And then once I kind of share with them, they're like, oh, well, there's no glory in it. It's like, well,
I
okay.
think that's what most people, they were like, oh yeah, I'm ready to fight and all that, but it's like, I don't think you understand.
Right, and it's not about fighting, actually. It's about being surgical.
A game of wits.
What's that?
A game of wits.
A game of wit, yeah. It's a chess match the whole way, particularly when you realize it's not about us, it's about the kid. A lot of people want to come on board and do stuff because they're still trying to find a place to be about themselves, and we just don't have room for it. It's just the liability is too hard. So we still welcome those resumes, because as we build out, there's so many people we've met that we're just like, boy, I'd love to have you on the team. We just did the Super Bowl in LA, and we brought
Which is a highly human trafficked event, from my understanding, right?
Evidently it was. When you're in the field, in the neighborhoods of MS-13, the Bloods and Crips, and you're there, you don't really know what the numbers are going to be. So we only find out like the success of the operations like a week later and everything. But it's appeared to be good, and it was. We were in a somewhat of a high threat environment. You're in their backyard, and I mean, it wasn't like you and I being in Mogadishu necessarily, but it had the potential to erupt at any moment.
Oh, yeah.
So you just got to see with more than your eyes and hear with more than your ears. But in addition to that, there's so many Americans out there that can be a part of our team. And they don't even know it. So, for example, number one, and I always say this, your prayers. They're so valuable. Look, there's been so many times that God has just taken really good care of us. There's a spiritual component to this evil that most people would think was a sci-fi movie. But look, I live in it and I see it. And people do evil things to kids. And the mind, the body, and the spirit can't be separated. They're all part of it, and you can deny it all day long, but you're just a fool if you do. So we've learned more about that. The second thing is finances, donations. Since we don't take, since we don't take grants from the federal government, we look to our private donors to help us get a ticket on an airplane, put fuel in a vehicle. Operational expenses is what we call them, because no one gets a paycheck. It's all volunteer. Everybody does something else to pay their mortgage. And we've always been that way, and we'll probably always be that way. But as we go out and rescue more children, it costs more money. For example, an operation in America may cost us $20,000. If that kid gets hauled off to Nigeria and trafficked there, what's probably going to cost us $70,000? The money isn't the issue here. It's the facilitation for the operation, so to speak. So anytime people can donate, if you go to www.recoveryofchildren.org, You can donate there. And every single penny has oversight. We have Tashima and Company, which is our accounting firm. We are beholden to the IRS as well. So every penny we get goes into operations. And that helps us a lot. It really does. There's nothing worse. Excuse me. There's nothing worse than the three of us sitting here and realizing we got this great case. We know where the 4-year-old girl is. She's being held in a basement in the middle of some state somewhere. And we know we can launch, and we know we can save her life, particularly if we also get intel that the perpetrator has been known to kill off his victims, right? And so we're sitting here talking about it. We're doing the 5-paragraph order. We're all ready to roll. We go through it. The kid's alive. We know the location of the kid. And then all of a sudden we realize we can't get a vehicle. Or we can't find the money to just put the gas, because now it's $10 a gallon, of course.
It's been about an hour since that conversation.
Which is, it's really funny. The people that are raising the gas prices don't realize that all those people that handle things like this and emergencies, a lot of those things they're not going to be able to afford to do anymore.
They got to be able to
They're
drive.
not going to be able to afford to fly a plane and get some kid out or whatever it may be, or, even an ambulance, who knows, whatever. But when all of a sudden the reality of the fact is like, we can't buy a ticket because we know we've got to be on the ground in the next 6 hours. And we can't buy a ticket, or we don't have somebody that wants to donate an airplane with the fuel in place so that we can be on the ground in time to prevent that predator from hacking that little girl up. And by the way, they do hack them up and put them in body bags, and they spread them all over the place as well. Then all of a sudden, the reality of our operation and the failure part of that becomes reality to us. That was a double entendre, I think. But anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The mission is going to fail before it even gets started because we simply can't get there in time.
Yeah.
And so people's finances help us do that to save a life. Now, we don't exploit the child. Like a lot of times on our website, there are some people and some children that have said, put my picture up there, please let me tell my story. We honor their wishes. They have their reasons for that. But there are many others that we never show their real face. Or like recently, we just put girls saved. We don't get into the details of it. There's things we don't want to exploit with the story. It's an ongoing operation, whatever it may be. So we're very careful about that. But had we not had donations, we couldn't have done it. I'll give a perfect example, not to get long-winded, but do you remember all the illegal children that were being flown into Chattanooga, Tennessee? Okay, Biden was flying them in. Biden was flying them in. We were the first guys on the ground running surveillance on that operation. We knew we needed to be there in 3 hours because the plane was going to land at 2 o'clock in the morning. One of our board of directors, Mark Schoten, God bless him, knew we had an operation. He had just come on board as a board of director. He had a Learjet. He flew his own Learjet, paid for the fuel for the operation.
Which is not cheap.
Which is not cheap. Got us there in time to get on the ground to film the aircraft coming in that were taking children off the airplane, putting them on buses, and we followed those buses to another location where they were taking and dumping children off. Not exchanging paperwork, not reuniting them with families, literally watching children be shuttled off a bus and put in individual cars that different men were driving. Where are those kids going? It was like, we don't know. And of course, then we informed the governor of Tennessee. He wasn't even aware of it. It got exposed to the media. We exposed it in the media. And they all said that the governor, you probably saw that, he asked Washington, he asked the Biden administration, what were they doing? And they just tried to shuffle it off. But it happened. But had we not had access to an aircraft, we'd have never been able to expose that. And so, could we have saved all those children? We probably could have, because those planes, if I'm not mistaken, are still coming into the United States illegally, depositing illegal immigrants throughout the country. Last drop was up in Pennsylvania. So anyway, that's how they can help us. And I can promise you that with the amount of oversight we have, that we're very, very careful with our spending, when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it was important too, just to reiterate that you don't take any handouts from the government, so no grants or anything like that, because that just puts roadblocks in so many different, whether it's at any level, the state level, the national level. You are kind of working without boundaries by not being kind of stalwarted by the government, by those interested parties that maybe aren't really on your side. What's the website one more time?
Recoveryofchildren.org.
So I know you can go there. Right at the top right is a donate button.
You can, yeah.
It's worth to just check out kind of all the testimonies and the stories too. There's some great bios about yourself, the team, the board of directors, all that too. So definitely check that out. Again, for us, at TexasGunExperience.com, we're going to have pretty much all the same information. So we have a video that's kind of telling the story, kind of about our collaboration, behind the build, behind ARC, TGE, kind of getting everyone together. We'll have bios of everybody and the companies as well, and a chance to donate. So, a little bit more lighthearted conversation here coming up, but so some of the things that we have a chance to donate is Staccato XC, which is a flagship, performance handgun from
Sweet
Staccato.
pistol.
So we took that down in the range, and it's okay, right? I mean, it's
okay.
You didn't get that back, did you?
Yeah.
I didn't take it.
If it's not in my bag. So it's one hell of a gun. So there's a chance, and it's custom engraved, custom stipple pattern, everything from Staccato. So they handpicked that one out and engraved it for us. So that'll be one of the giveaways. And then, of course, the motorcycle, which all three of us, I mean, we're, you don't see them on camera, but are kind of the magician behind all the cameras and everything too. So we're all big bike guys, whether, working professionally in the motorcycle industry. I know we, professionally raced for years. So we're excited to just, and we're able to kind of geek out, and we'll motorhead out a little bit about what you brought for us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, maybe reiterate about Green Devil, and then tell us about the build and just kind of the thought behind it, because it's just too cool not to share. Make sure you want to hit up. Yeah, dude.
And speaking of, appreciate being part of this, and I'm so happy to be a part of another way of a means of helping out, and I definitely want to continue that relationship. Any build that comes out of Green Devil, anything I can do to push anything y'all's way and help out with that. I mean,
Thanks, Patrick.
It's definitely near and dear. I don't have any kids that I know of.
Yeah, we get some calls after this. We'll hand out a cell phone after that.
It's my mom does home child care, and just this morning, I'm staying at my mom's place while I was in town. It's pretty sweet, no big deal, car bed, all that. Just like messing with little curly haired little boy, red hair, just messing with him, and just after that story yesterday, and then in today, that life in the eyes, man, it just registers and hits home so much more. Like, maybe like really think about it. So I hope that anybody watching this like takes a minute and really lets that sit with them, and hopefully in turn that will just continue to help you guys out, because I mean, I challenge anybody to look in a little kid's eyes, see that life, and then just think of it just not being there. Man, that like just drove the point home for me. So on lighter note, motorcycle, I think God kind of puts us in places or situations and path in life to be able to do good in life, and based on perspective, life experiences, you're going to take one way or the other. I was leaning more towards one bad way, and I just got whipped into shape, and I was fortunately blessed with the skill of craftsmanship. So I built this motorcycle. This is I think I've done 7 or 8 builds for various charities to help out in different ways. And this one is it's a 2007. It's a hardtail, class that is a 2007 with a Evolution motor, 5-speed. I am a stickler when it comes to like nomenclatures of what it is. What everybody that doesn't know anything about motorcycles will say that it is a bobber. It's not. It's a chopper.
It's a chopper.
Yeah. It's old school. But anybody
But
else?
it's not like the Orange County choppers with a 20-foot front end that's impossible to ride.
I wasn't gonna say anything. Man, I was in New York with the copper chopper years ago, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you don't want to show this around here. You know, Paul's out here." I'm like, "Paul who?" Like Paul Tuttle from Orange County. I was like, "What's he gonna do? Come beat me up for having a motorcycle, man? Come on, guy." Handlebar mustache.
From what I know about motorcycles and most people that would be looking at this, I would say, I want you to continue to elaborate on it, but I think whether you're a bike guy or maybe this is just something cool that you'd like to have and maybe become a bike guy, it's very rideable. So having been around, thousands of custom bikes, like this is something that if you know the proper body mechanics, it is a very rideable bike. So I really appreciate that. I think because whomever wins this thing is not only going to have just a bitch and piece to show up at, whether it's their local bike night or Starbucks on the weekend, depending on whatever their crew is, but they're going to enjoy riding, actually being able to ride it. So
Heck,
not
it's
just
such a
art.
cool bike that even if you don't ride it and you just sit on it in your living room,
Yeah, dude.
you will instantly be cool. I'm just telling
Yeah,
you.
we'll blow in your hair and make engine
You
noises.
put a fan in front of you,
Yeah.
blow your hair, and
Yeah.
just pretend. But it's an amazing
It's
bike.
definitely like functional, like
Oh.
underlying functional art.
Yeah.
So please continue.
You guys are making me blush, man. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way I like to build. Anything that comes out of my garage, I want somebody to be able to get on and just ride. And that's what this bike really epitomizes. It's everything. I try to do it real subtle, like the gas tank, for example. It has a early 90s kind of Harley logo with a big wing on it, and the circle up front of the wing where it would say Harley Davidson actually has the number 31 for extortion 17 to 31 Americans, 30 American men and one working dog that were lost. So I like to hide those things in because say you're at a gas station, something like that, and somebody's just walking around the bike, and I guarantee you, whoever wins this thing, people are not going to leave you alone at a gas station.
You know what? Can you elaborate on the 31? Because a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know.
It's just extortion 17 or 17.
Yeah,
Kind of
because
what that is,
they don't
too.
know, but it makes the bike even that more special.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think, while we're, doing this for, charitable causes with ARC, I think the awareness of that whole, extortion 17, how it ties in with just being, uniform service and all that is important. Whether military or not, like, just going back to being American, things like that, like, this story affects every one of us because it happened after a very, benchmark in U.S. history, so.
Yeah, so it was August 6, 2011, and to date, it is the largest single loss of soft special operations, excuse me, operators in one single instance. So it was 30 Americans were killed from the flight crew and from SEAL Team 6, and their one working dog. There was also a couple guys from Team 5, a whole plethora of guys going in as an immediate reaction force to go help some Rangers that were already boots on ground. So they were all loaded up in a 47 to fly in and help out as that immediate reaction force. And anybody listening to this, I challenge you just do a Google search and you can get a much more in-depth, I think the Smithsonian.
And read their names too. Like I know on the on the webpage and everything like that, it'll have the names. And damn, I wish I could actually fit all those on some of the giveaway guns and things like that. But I think, man, spend the 5 minutes, read their names, read their rank. Even the working dog, everyone, like all of it counts, man. Even those that weren't American lives. So I know they had, foreign help, terps, all that stuff. Like, read the story, read their names. It's good.
And that's the whole reason behind building these bikes. This last August was actually the 10th anniversary of Extortion, and the very first custom motorcycle that I built out of Green Devil Garage was the first extortion 17 Memorial Motorcycle. I believe it was 2 years following the, the actual event, and down the backbone of the motorcycle. And for people that don't know, the backbone is what the gas tank sits on. And I actually painted in everybody's call sign going down the backbone of the motorcycle. So again, I like to hide those details. I want somebody to just be able to happily ride their motorcycle, but I want it to be a conversation piece, because anybody that owns these bikes, they are now the steward of that
There's a soul
story.
to that bike, yeah.
They're the ones that should be telling that story. They should study that history and be able to tell the story of these guys. And it's, especially at this point now, and knowing the families being part of the teams, the remembrance, so easily everybody forgets. And at this point now, very sad and tragic event, but remember the guys and what they were there for. They're doing their jobs. There's been numerous times on helicopters, even shortly right after that happened. I was in country like a day later. I remember sitting on a helicopter just like I normally do. I'd pull up my buttstock and put my chin down and just like kind of go to sleep. I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, this is, I mean, we just get so accustomed to just doing this that it's not even a complacency in the helicopter, but you just become so numb to everything. I'm like, man, this is what probably everybody was doing. Like, hey, we're going to work.
Right.
And then gone. So it's definitely, it's an event that needs to be remembered, and remembered in a good way. I mean, something, I was going to mention this earlier. I was on a Dutch frigate for like a week doing some work in another place, and sitting there talking to, Dutch do it right, man. They got 3 bars on their boat. It was great. We had awesome time. But we're sitting there, I was talking to one of their medics, and he's like, yeah, it's something I really wish I would have done. I wish I would have gone into special operations. So you really feel like I helped somebody. But all that stuff is, it's perspective based. Like guys like us, we're a bit tougher. And I've worked with guys with one leg. I know guys with no legs that just keep going. And that, missing a leg is, the same as to somebody else, like breaking a finger. It could be just that detrimental to them. So, and to the Dutch guy conversation, they still celebrate when we came in World War II and saved everything. They celebrate it to this day, still have parades. And, any veteran I see wearing a hat, I go up to and I thank them for their service, because we don't do anything for our people anymore.
Yeah. It's weird when I first got in, I'm like, try not to, don't wear anything moto, don't wear anything like that. But, once you get out, you kind of get a little bit more perspective, and it's like, same thing, man. There is really no one left from World War II. So, and those that are still around, hopefully we can document the stories. I was fortunate, my grandfather had a lot of conversation with him. So I hope, there's plenty of that we can just have kind of living memory of. But, we were talking yesterday, with fathers being in like Vietnam, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, especially those eras too, that, they were spit on, they were cussed at, they were hated on, everything. So I think it's just important. Just thanks. It's just cool. Shake their hand. Maybe buy them a beer, have a story. But
you guys are probably the same. I still, my reaction when somebody thanks me is I just say it's my pleasure. I feel awkward. Actually, I was just in Wyoming this last weekend, and I saw this young, brand new officer Marine in his blues, and my immediate reaction when I go in is
piling chicks around.
You dork! Like, what are you wearing all that for? Right, I wanted to give him a rash of crap, but I thought about it, and I mean,
you remembered he was a Marine.
Yeah, and I didn't want to get beat up.
No,
I got old man strength on my side now. But it took me a second, because this point in time right now, would I join? I don't know. It's just such a hard time, and I actually just went up and thanked him, and I'm glad I did, because everybody around him was his dad and his dad's friends, and they're all FBI guys, and it just ended up being a great conversation. I just talked to him for a minute. All of them thanked me for what I had said to him as far as leadership, and I hope he goes and does great things. I really do. But too easily do we forget these things, and that's what the motorcycles. I'm fortunate that I'm still in the military. I have a paycheck that pays for my living, so everything with the shop wise either goes into the shop, or if I can do something like with this cause, then I go full bore into that and do what I can to help other people, because I've been fortunate to be blessed with the gift of craftsmanship.
Right.
I'll never be a rich man because I just build things. I don't know anything about computers, so I'm pretty much screwed this day and age.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, what you built will save the lives of many children.
So that makes me happier than I appreciate it. That makes me happier than I could ever explain. I think
And the
it's
next time we have a child, after this is over, and we rescue a child or children or whatever, you'll be one of the first ones to hear about it.
that'd be
We'll
awesome.
get you on the horn and go, hey, guess what? Because of you, we brought another one home.
That's awesome. That makes me feel.
Same thing with you, Brian, with the gun.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this whole thing, so, I mean, that's what we're doing it for, right? It's, anything that we're doing, whether it's video or this podcast, is only just to get the word out on this, the project, because the more we can raise, the better. The gun stuff, the bike stuff, everything that we're doing, the fundraising is fun, glamorous, whatever. It's a means to an end. And, hopefully, everyone listening can, hopefully this conversation sparks enough interest. Just just do a little homework, like whether it's on, the webpage that we created, for this whole event, on the Association of Recovery of Children.org, wherever it may be. Just, hopefully this is the first step to getting some more awareness, getting some contribution, because you don't have to be boots on the ground. You don't have to be, Jason Bourne or Spies or anything like that. Like, even if you donate, man, stop getting your fat coffee once a week, and for a month, and donate, So we have some cool things that we're offering, with the motorcycle. I think that's just going to be a hellacious project that people are going to go nuts for. Or if you want the firearm, we're going to be making T-shirts, things like that. So, I mean, not everybody has, all the means, but even just something. I mean, every little bit will help and will go towards the project. So,
Right.
We're humbled by all of it. We're also very enthusiastic to get you guys here, get everything going. And I'm sure this isn't going to be the first and last, project that we work on together. So, I mean, it's just all in all, it's good. I mean, makes us feel good. It's, man, and I know we all want to do more, but I think this is the best way we know how. And we just want to we want to fight. So, and hopefully everyone else does too.
Hopefully.
Cool. Anything else on that? Any closing remarks? I think we kind of nailed it.
No, we're just grateful. Thank you guys for everything. Thank you.
Again, I appreciate you guys both having here, man. Again, just humbled by the last kind of day and a half I spent with you. So, and I know it's not the first and it's not the last time, we'll speak, but it's just been cool getting you guys here, kind of building all this crazy stuff last minute and getting it all together. But I think this whole kind of project with the fundraising and all that will be successful. I think our audience and everybody, kind of nationwide is going to really, again, get good awareness and just be able to invest and take part and join the fight. So thanks for everybody listening. Thanks for watching. Again, hit us up at texasgunexperience.com. We will have pretty much every way to get involved, whether it's links to the motorcycle at Green Devil Garage, find out more about Patrick, find out about the bikes and the builds and some of the the other charities that he's kind of worked with before. Definitely check out the Association for the Recovery of Children. Find out more about Baz. I know both these guys just have tremendous stories, which itself, I mean, there's God, we could write books about these guys. So find out more there. At TexasGunExperience.com, we have every way that you can enter to win. Again, links to all these guys. Make sure you're following them on social media, and let's check you guys out next week.